My brother Bob, however, was a soldier, so he was sent up to fight. You're not just fighting for your city. It's up to you to bring glory to our family's name and to uphold its honor on the battlefield. So, no pressure. No problem. Oh, I didn't see you there. I can't see anything in this stupid helmet. Throughout history, there have been many great tales about great men doing great things. This is not that story. There are also the untold stories of the ordinary people who accompany these heroes and play a small yet important role. This is not that story. This story is about Jerricles. Probably the most unimportant person to have ever lived. Born in ancient Greece, he is a common Athenian citizen. We will be following his story in his own words, that he wrote down in his ancient Greek journals. These are scrolls that have been recently found in the bathrooms of the British Museum of History. One. First winter entry of first year. Dear Journal, my name is Jerricles, Jerry for short. It's the year 415 BC. I'm 20 years old and was born in the year 435 BC. It sounds backwards, but we count down our years here. We don't know what we're counting down to, but we're all very excited to find out. I recently came into some papyrus scrolls and decided to keep a record of my life. You like garbage, Jerry. Take these home. Wow. This is a new journal, so I would like to summarize my life up to this point. I was born in 435 BC in Athens, Attica, ancient Greece. But my story actually begins with a dream my father had. One night, after eating some old rotten meat, because it's hard to preserve food here, my dad had a bad dream about a cloud of abstract horror and terror emanating from my mother's, birthing area. My mom was, in reality, pregnant, and my dad is a rich and ambitious man. He took the dream to be an omen, a warning that his new baby will bring disaster to his business. So when the baby was born, he put it in a little clay jar. Then he grabbed me from my play corner and left the two of us kids in a field outside the city, where all the other abandoned babies are left. Don't move until I come back with your birthday present. I love you, Daddy. What? I think it's about noontime. The ancient world is a rough place. If a baby does not meet a parent's qualifications, they get chucked out. You put your baby in a clay jar, so if they don't get picked up by someone else, they have a ready-made coffin. Dad always thought I was weird. So, he decided to take care of two problems with one abandonment. It was just me and my brother, Bobicus, who was sleeping in the jar, waiting to die of exposure. Luckily, my foster dad found us. At the time, there was a plague in Athens. Everyone was walled up in the city as the Spartans were ravaging the countryside. The city was crammed with people, so the disease spread easily. All 6 of my foster dad's children died. There's a lot of emotional trauma in a loss like that, but it's also an economic one as well. My foster father needed help and could not afford slaves, so he took us home. We were raised in a Thetes household, the lowest class of Athenian citizens. Less than a third of the city's inhabitants are citizens, so even though we are poor and lower class, we are still part of an elite. We still get to look down at non-citizens. Skip ahead a few years, and Bob and I were playing with some kids. Bob declared himself the king, and overawed by his noble bearing, all the other children dutifully took his orders. Some rich kid wanted to be king, and Bob struck him with a stick. The father of the rich kid was ready to beat Bob when... "Stop! That's my son!" It was our first father, Herodotus. "Did you see how that kid thought he should be in charge for no reason?" said our real father in his loud, raspy voice. "He has the spirit of a nobleman! He also sort of looks like a baby I abandoned once." Our foster father told Herodotus he found us alone as babies, but he would be happy to reunite our family. "Thank you, good sir," said Herodotus. "I have always regretted my decision. You deserve a reward for bringing our family back together. You can keep the other one, with my thanks." So Bob went to live with our biological father, and I stayed with our foster dad, who, unfortunately, died soon after from a resurgence of the plague. It wasn't an easy death, as the disease is just as cruel as everything else in this world. I did more than watch my foster family slowly die off. Growing up, I watched the ships come and go from the harbor of Piraeus. Every free day, I would walk up and down the thin hallway created by the famous long walls connecting the harbor to the city. At this point, we had been at war with Sparta for a while, and the walls kept them out of the city as our ships came and went freely. We were a land island, cut off from the rest of Greece. I would watch the rowers board their triremes and row off to some adventure. Since as long as I could remember, I wanted to be a rower. I wanted to leave the walls of this claustrophobic city and breathe the free air of the sea and go on a grand adventure somewhere, find a town and take all their stuff. I want to make my fortune. War booty is where you make the real money in this world. The war with Sparta lasted an entire decade, but a truce was signed, just as I was coming into adulthood. At this time I lived with my foster mother, Agristi, in the city. I am able to support us with the various jobs my biological father gives me. He is rich and is involved in many businesses. Sometimes I get a job on a boat at Piraeus and get to row around the harbor. I have my own paddle, as most rowers do. The jobs are good, but they're just practice for the real rowing I want to do. I want to be on a trireme. I want to be in the Navy. I have auditioned for many ships, but I was never quite good enough. There is less call for warship rowers during peacetime. If this was wartime, the standards would be achievable for me. My other love is the theater, specifically Sophocles. Even more specifically, his play, Oedipus Rex. It's about a king who was abandoned at birth because of a warning his father got in a dream. Euripides is popular right now. I just saw his play, Trojan Women. It's about the victorious Greeks sacking Troy at the end of the Trojan War. I found it aspirational, but not as relatable as Oedipus Rex. And that is my life. Until now. 2. Second winter entry of first year. Dear Journal, the great thing about democracy is you get to go to assemblies. The Pnyx is where all the citizens gather to vote on important issues. It's a little hill not far from the Agora. We meet outside because the weather is so hot in Greece. Some people find these gatherings boring, and you can't make decisions if there are too few citizens voting. So we use big burly Scythian slaves to encourage attendance. Before each meeting, the slaves go out into the Agora, our marketplace, and gather up anyone who looks like a voting-age male. If you get marked by one of their red-dyed ropes, you're charged with a fine. We take participation seriously here. Today was important. We were discussing war. I got up late because we have no machines that can wake us up in the morning. I can't afford fines, so I ran as fast as I could to the meeting place. I tripped on a herm in my haste. Some of them stick out pretty far. They are statues with the head of the god Hermes. He protects travelers, so you will see a Hermes at most intersections. They are incredibly common. As you see, these statues depict more than just the head of Hermes. This other part of the statue can be a tripping hazard sometimes. I was caught by a Scythian. He got me on the arms as I was picking myself up. Bad luck because I owed money to everybody. Rent for the landlord, the bread bill for the baker, not to mention the gambling debts I owe Mom. I suppose I could go double or nothing at our next dice game. Then I thought I could just hide my mark under my cloak during the assembly until I got home and could change my shirt. I hurried to the Pnyx. When I got there, Nicias was already speaking. Nicias is a respected statesman and successful general. His success in the battlefield has more to do with his luck than tactics, though. But as many of us believe here, you want to be around someone with good luck, just like you want to avoid someone with the bad kind. He's also the guy who's responsible for the peace we're enjoying now. It was quite packed there, shoulder-to-shoulder room. Although this assembly was convened to consider the preparations to be made for sailing to Sicily, I think that we should still examine whether we should send our ships at all. It sounded like Nicias was still apprehensive about the war we voted for last week. We had delegates here from Segesta the other day. Segesta is a city on the island of Sicily. They asked for our help because the city of Syracuse was pushing them around. Alcibiades, another statesman who's coming up, put forward a motion to send an expedition to Sicily and to conquer Syracuse. Of course we voted in favor. It gives me a better chance of becoming a rower. I must remind you that we are leaving many enemies at home, like Sparta, to make new ones far away. Nicias is a nice enough guy, but he's always looking on the negative side. Athens has had a naval empire since Pericles, and we've beaten everyone before. Why can't we do it again? Why can't we conquer the whole world? Only now are we enjoying some respite from plague and war. We should use these benefits on ourselves and not on a foreign war. And if there be any man here overjoyed at being chosen for command, who urges you to war for his own ends, and is too young to be a general, and seeks to be admired for his stud of horses, yeah. The guy Nicias is talking about is Alcibiades. He is the nephew and ward to the late great Pericles. It was Pericles' idea to wall us all in together. I don't think Nicias and Alcibiades like each other. Athenians, I have a better right to command than others. And, at the same time, I believe myself to be worthy of it. I like his confidence. Alcibiades is the cool bad boy of Athens. He's my favorite. He and his foster father Pericles are and were members of the wealthiest and oldest family in Athens, the Alcmenidae. Any splendor that I may have exhibited at home, paying for expensive plays or otherwise, is naturally envied by my fellow citizens. But in the eyes of foreigners, it has an air of strength. It is good when a man uses his fortune to benefit not only himself, but his city. You see, he uses his fortune to make us awesome. Alcibiades sent 7 chariots to represent us at the Olympic Games. Most rich people struggle just to send 1. The talk is that Alcibiades wants to be a tyrant, the sole, unchallenged ruler of a city. It's true he's part of the oligarchic party, that is, he's in favor of families such as his running everything. Nicias was a Democrat. He believed more people should have a share in power, excluding, of course, women, slaves, people who have only one Athenian parent, and so on. While my flower is still in its bloom, and Nicias' luck holds, why not use us to our utmost potential? Alcibiades continued his speech, saying the Sicilians would be pushovers and that we should actually be expanding our empire or risk atrophy. I spied Nicias in deep thought. He looked up like a chime went off in his head. He clearly had a new tactic in mind. I see, Athenians, that you are thoroughly bent on the expedition. But I say to you, again, the Syracusans are far from being pushovers, and they have a home advantage. I will tell you what we need to accomplish this adventure." He then gave us a long list of the people and equipment we would need. It seemed like a lot. "We'll need at least 5,000 hoplites from here and our allies, archers from Crete, slingers, siege works, thousands of measures of grain, not to mention all the ships needed for transport, and we would need at least 100 triremes, and the thousands of rowers needed for those." That last bit caught my attention. I wanted to vote for that. I wanted to be one of those thousands of rowers. The guy beside me said, "Wow, that's a lot. Should we reconsider?" I may have freaked out a little. "Are you getting between me and my live stream?" "No, sorry." Talk, talk, talk. It continued while I bounced with enthusiasm to vote. Finally, a motion was put forward. 3 generals would be in command. Democracies at this time hated the idea of one man being in charge. That's what tyrannies and monarchies did. These generals were Nicias, Alcibiades, and Lamachus. Lamachus is a general not as rich as Nicias and Alcibiades, but he is the most experienced fighter of the 3. It was thought that the 3 would balance each other out. The youthful enthusiasm of Alcibiades would be tempered by the wiser, cautious Nicias. Lamachus was the experienced general. They would also be given full powers to gather as many men and supplies they needed. The vote was an overwhelming yes. The assembly broke up, and I needed to get home to change into an unmarked shirt, then talk to my dad. However, I was accosted by Old Man Socrates. I assume he's homeless. He has no shoes and he smells. Not only that, he's always stopping people in the streets asking nonsensical questions. I caught his eye. "You there, young man," he bellowed into my nose. "Why are you so eager to fight? Wars and revolutions and battles are due simply and solely to the body and its desires. All wars are undertaken for the acquisition of wealth. And the reason why we have to acquire wealth is the body, because we are slaves in its service." "Yes, sir," I said, smiling and nodding, catching some of what he said. "I am too a slave of my body. I need food. A war will get the money I need for it." He looked befuddled, then he spoke. "Have you sealed your ears with wax? That is what I said. We must set our soul free from it. We must behold things as they are." "How prettily you speak, wise sir," I said, needing to get to my father's before sundown. "Someone should write down your sayings. I must leave now. Here, take these 3 obli and buy yourself a sandwich." "Aha, caught you. Pay up." I was spotted by a Scythian, and he took my last obli. When I got home, I changed as quickly as I could. My mom called to me from across our 20-foot by 20-foot room we call home. "Did you get tomorrow's bread?" "No, I was fined. I have to go to my biological dad and ask for money." "Did you hear? We're going to war with Sicily." "You can't leave," said my shocked mother. "I'm old and enfeebled, and there are no homes for old people." "I haven't been accepted by a ship yet," I said as I went out the door. "Gotta go, sun's going down." "If you're asking for money," Mom yelled as I ran out the door, "make sure you get the dice money you owe me. I don't want to hear any of this double or nothing crap." I tried to beat the sun. I was tripped again. "You always look so pleased." As I said, my biological dad is rich, so he lives in a house with multiple rooms. At first he didn't allow me in his home, but my biological mom put an end to that. She encourages me to come and go as I please. She said it was the least they could do after leaving me for dead. But it wasn't just bread money I wanted from my dad. I hoped he could use his connections to get me on a trireme. I have the solution to both your problems, Jerry, my dad said in an uncharacteristically chipper way. You can roll for me. In fact, here's a week's pay in advance. Dad tossed me a bag with 7 drachmae in it. I felt out of the loop. I bought a trireme, Jerry. I'm a trierarch, exclaimed my dad. A real ship's captain. That was fast, I said. We just had the vote. It's been in the works for a while, he said. I'm sick of being a second-class citizen. I want to be a Pentacosomedimnoi, a first-class citizen. They get to be in the high offices. One day, I'll be one of the 10 generals. The highest officials in the government are the 10 generals, or strategoi. They are elected by the 10 tribes of Athens. Each general shares equal power. As I said, democracies hate single rulers. Dad has ambitions for the top. How much property you have decides your class. As you see, I'm poor and own nothing, so I'm at the bottom. A thetis. If you were rich, you were expected to contribute to the city. This was called a liturgy. If you were really rich and a Pentacosomedimnoi, you were expected to pay for the really expensive stuff, like plays or maintaining warships, like Dad decided to do. It's not a new ship, he continued. I could only afford a second-hand one. It's a little soggy, a little leaky, but it has character, and it has more soul than Simon's sleek, cutting-edge vanity project. He spends his money on ships rather than dice and coin tossing, said my biological mom, Elpenice. Bah, scoffed Dad. Gambling is the only thing you can do to pass the time. It's not like there's some magical tablet that lets me watch plays or read scrolls. He has discipline, retorted my mom. He has money, re-retorted my dad. Old money. The Philiads' age and wealth rivals that of the Alcmenidae. He was handed his riches and his newest, top-of-the-line trireme. There was a short, uncomfortable silence. Then, I could have married Simon, you know. Oh, I fall asleep every night wishing that you married Simon instead of me. I wouldn't have all these stupid kids dependent on me, cried Dad. You only have 2 kids, Henry, reminded Mom. Yeah, I got one kid who can't be a rower without nepotism, and another one who needs thousands of drachma for armor, complained Dad. But don't get me wrong. I'm glad Bob is going to be a hoplite on this trip. Dad looked around. Ah, there you are, Bob, said my dad to my brother, standing right beside me all this time, quiet and stoic. His exploits on this adventure will help raise the name of the Pussy Williads. That's us, to the heights occupied by the Philiads and the Alcmenidae. Are you ready to kill some Sicilians, Bob? Yep, answered my brother. I was a born rower, and my brother was a born hoplite. In this gritty world where children are encouraged to fight each other to toughen them up, my brother always came out on top. He likes to punch. A hoplite are armored soldiers who fight in a formation called phalanxes. These guys are usually from the middle to upper classes because they have such expensive armor. Anyway, Dad was getting drunker, so I left before his good mood turned. 3. Third winter entry of first year. Dear Journal, it's been a few weeks, but I've been too tired to do anything after training, even write. You see, I've been doing some basic rowing training at Piraeus. Not only do we train our bodies, but we learn all about the trireme as well. As you can see, there are 3 levels of rowers on a trireme, hence the tri in the name. You don't want to be on the bottom. There aren't many bathroom breaks during a rowing day, and people get scared during battle. There can be as many as 180 rowers to a ship, along with a few marines, so it also gets cramped in there, as well as hot. The main way you fight with a trireme is by ramming it into your enemy. Rowing is actually a very technical skill that requires intense teamwork. Turning, starting, stopping, and any other movements takes incredible coordination among all the rowers. Today when I got home, I was surprised by a punch to the face. My mom had bought a slave. I asked her why.
The loss of an able-bodied 20-year-old is quite a loss to this household, so I used your advance to buy a slave to replace you,
she replied. That was our only money, I said in shock. I won't get paid till after training. I'm going to have to start a tab with the baker again.
It's worth it,
my mom retorted.
You'll be sending money, but I'll still need someone to draw water from the well, clean the apartment, and satisfy my other old womanly needs. All of them.
It's lucky the expedition is leaving next week. My expenses continue to mount. 4. First summer entry, first year. Disaster, absolute disaster, and they're blaming Alcibiades for it. The very next morning, after I learned Mom bought a slave, and the morning of the first day of summer, I was leaving my home for training, when I didn't trip over our Herm. You seem less jovial today. Oh dear, oh dear. When I heard a shout, I learned that this wasn't about me. I saw that my neighbor's Herm was desecrated in the same way. Soon I learned that all the Herms in Athens had their appendages chipped off. There was another huge assembly at the Pnyx. Every citizen was there. They thought that this might have been part of a plot by Alcibiades to become a tyrant. A big accusation that would require a long investigation. But we were only 6 days from leaving, and I had debts to be paid. Many other citizens were in the same position, especially people like my dad, who bought ships or other supplies for the expedition, and expected the war booty to pay it off. The harbor in Piraeus was now full of Athenian and allied ships. We were ready to go. No one wanted to postpone the expedition over this, even though everyone was quite distressed. Some thought this was a bad omen for our adventure. Alcibiades demanded a trial right there and then. He was willing to risk the penalty of death to prove his innocence. In the end, it was decided to continue with the expedition, and Alcibiades was not charged. For now, the dismemberments of the Herms remain a mystery. At least I still get to go on my adventure. 5. Second summer entry, first year. Dear Journal, today was the big day, and my eyes had never seen anything so magnificent. I doubt anyone has. I hear that this is the largest expedition we have ever sent. All the ship's captains had spared no expense outfitting and decorating their vessels. My foster and biological families were at the docks to say farewell. Dad showed us our ship. Here it is, the Melita, or B. See how I made the prow a needle? That was my idea. This is a proud day for me, continued Dad. I am a first-class citizen going out to add to the glory of my polis. And I have my son sailing right beside me. It's a proud day for me too, Dad, I said. I get to share in your... What? Ew, no. I mean, Bob is sailing with me, as a Marine. Why aren't you down below yet? What's that, a wasp? Mocked a voice. Oh, crap, Dad said under his breath. It's Simon. Is that a stinger? Aren't those usually on the back? You should repaint your trireme and go into battle ass first. It's a bee, actually, shouted my dad over the merriment. Oh, my mistake, Simon falsely demurred. The bee is the perfect name for an annoying, buzzing pest. It's faster than your ship, desperately retorted Dad. Faster than the Nike? You must be joking. It's the most expensive ship in the fleet. No, I am not joking, Dad said defiantly. I will put money on it. What money do you have? I bet your ship put you into debt. I don't want your pennies. We'll wager something. Simon bit his fingers in thought. Yes, Simon began. The fleet will be having a little race to Aegina after the ceremony. We'll be resting and beaching our ships there for the night. The winner of this race will be the first to receive the Ship of the Month award. What about it? Asked an impatient dad. How about a side bet? Continued Simon. If your ship arrives on the island before mine does, my crew and I will beach your ship and clean it for you. Really? Dad asked. You, Mr. High and Mighty, will get in the muck and clean our ship? Yes, I will, answered Simon. And you'll do the same if you lose. All right, you have a bet, Dad said, offering a handshake. That's okay, Simon said, staring at the hand. I don't want to get dirty. Unless I have to. Simon and his cackling lackeys left. Dad was vibrating now. Everybody into the ship, said Dad. Let's get a head start.
Hold on, Henry,
chimed in my biological mom, Agristi.
I still need to say goodbye to my son. Give your mother a kiss, Jerry.
I did.
I'm sorry I let Henry abandon you all those years ago,
my mom began.
It's very hard in this city for a woman. 4 out of every 5 of our babies die on us. And every pregnancy is a potential death sentence. I guess you just become numb to loss at some point, but what was I going on about? Goodbye, Jerry.
Goodbye, Mom, I said. Not sure what the speech was about. She went on to say goodbye to Bob. My foster mom was there with the new slave.
Bye, Jerry. Have a good time. Don't worry about me.
Sure. Bye, Mom. We boarded the Melita. I went down below. Being new, I get to be at the bottom. I found my spot. Wow. I'm a real trireme rower now. This was also the first time I met the rowers who would be my companions for the duration of this expedition. That's my spot, a big voice said, and I turned around to discover the body was just as big. Oh, sorry, I said as friendly as I could. I was told, and I'm telling you, get out of my spot. But before I could get any more words out, I was off the deck. Hey there, said a guy who wasn't as big as my new friend but looked like a living statue. Put the poor man down. What are you going to do about it? Said the big guy. I could lift you up, show you what it's like to be a little weakling, said the smaller guy as he brushed away a lock of golden blonde hair. Huh, I'd like to see. Before the big guy said more, he was up in the air. This small guy was holding up both of us. It was especially amazing because the height of the deck was only sitting room. We were put down after the big guy promised to leave me alone. Thanks, I said to my rescuer. I like to help, my rescuer said, then pointed his fingers at me with his thumbs sticking up, a gesture I have never seen before. I'm Archilles. Archie for short, said my rescuer. It was nice of him to help, but there's something about his extreme good looks and strength that I hate. Later, I learned that the big guy's name was Humongulus. Then a very small person with a very big mustache sat beside me. Hi, I tried to introduce myself, but was cut off. You're the Nepo baby. Some of us had to work to get here, he continued. Some of us aren't born with the same privileges as others. What privileges? I asked. I grew up poor. Yeah, he spat out. But your father owns the ship, and you're a citizen. Both your parents are Athenian. Oh, you mean you're... I began, cluing in on this man's identity. That's right. I'm a metic. My name is Dionysus. Everyone calls me Dino, he said. Only my mother was a citizen, which means I count as foreign-born and not a citizen. There are few places open for metic rowers. It took a lot of hard work and hustling for me just to be here. I decided to let him be. He looked a little off. He's wearing an obviously fake mustache. A trumpet sounded and the whole assembly went silent. The herald led a group prayer. Then sacrifices and toasts were made. The impressive parade of ships orderly filed out of the harbor. We were going to challenge the Syracusans with 130-odd ships, about 5,000 hoplites and some archers and slingers. I was doing well rowing. I remembered all the commands and was in perfect synchronization with all my fellow rowers. When we were well on our way, the race began. Our ship was feeling a bit sluggish. Triremes take on a lot of water, older ones more so. We were keeping pace with the rest of the fleet, but soon they were edging ahead of us. Eventually, we were pretty far behind. However, the Nike was lagging behind us as well. My dad was up top. "Ha!" he gloated. "All that money and his ship can't keep up with the rest of the fleet? Look, he's panicking!" Down below, I was beginning to tire out. "Don't slow down, Nepo," yelled Dino. I assumed referring to me. "We're almost past them." The heat in my pumping arms were unbearable. We were in a hole that was cramped, hot and smelly, the odor mostly coming off of sweating bodies. I could hear my dad dancing on top of me. But then, the Nike crept forward. Soon, it was pulling ahead of us. Then it reached the main body of the fleet. Soon the rich guy's ship was past everyone. It turned out Simon had the fastest ship in the Navy. The captain, my dad, wailed loudly. "Ah." He later told me that he could see Simon smirking as he gave the order to speed up. He had played with us. The Melita was so old and waterlogged that we turned out to be dead last. It was humiliating, and we had to pull both the Melita and the Nike out of the water and clean them after a long day of rowing. Triremes have to be taken out of the water and dried on the beach every night. This ship is a complicated weapon system and takes constant maintenance. The Nike's crew had a big laugh at our misery. Not a great first day. 6. Third summer entry, first year. Dear Journal, I'm currently beached outside the walls of Rhegium. This is the furthest our family has ever gone. My whole life I was walled up in Athens. I'm okay with being outside right now. A couple of weeks ago we left Aegina. There were no more races. We wheeled around the Peloponnese, homeland of our perpetual enemy, the Spartans. We stopped at Corcyra for a few days, where the fleet regrouped. The fleet made the crossing between Greece and Italy. As Corcyra was very close, it only took a day to sail. All the cities, from heel to toe on the Italian boot, are Greek colonies. Greece isn't known for its farmland. Many cities find themselves with more people than they can feed. We were forced to send out colonists to found their own towns, and hopefully find a way to feed themselves. As a result, you can find us all over the Mediterranean. If you were wondering, Syracuse was found by Corinthian colonists. Corinth is also known for its powerful navy. As we coasted along the instep, it was eerily quiet. Our Greek cities were closing their gates to us. They didn't even let the markets out of the city. We could not shop or refuel, and definitely none of them wanted to join our expedition. But I guess all cities are wary of strange armies. If you let them in, they may not leave. I was counting my strokes when I was interrupted by Trajan women? Up from Aegean caverns, pool by pool of blue salt sea. Humongulus was reciting Euripides, and everyone was into it. He recited the whole play, and he was playing all the parts. When he completed the play, he said he needed a break. I turned around and spoke to Humongulus. "You memorized Trajan women?" I asked. "I've memorized all of Euripides," he proudly replied. "How about Sophocles?" I asked, hoping to hear him again. "No," he said bluntly. "I find his stuff to be very unrelatable." "I find you to be unrelatable," I replied under my breath. We beached at Rhegium, at the tiptoe of Italy, where you can see Sicily on a clear day. Syracuse is only a few days further by ship. While the fleet was regrouping, our three generals decided to send a contingent of ships to Segesta. These are the guys who asked us to fight the Syracusans and promised to help pay for this very expensive military operation. The Melita went along too. We rowed across the north of Sicily and docked in Segesta's harbor. My brother Bob and Dad went ashore with the other delegates to seek the money Segesta promised. They returned shortly after. No one looked happy. When we beached the ship for the night, Dad told us a most fanciful, Herodotus-like story. Alcibiades had led the delegation, which included Bob and Dad. They marched to the city's agora and were met with a delegation from the city. Alcibiades asked for the money. Yeah, about that. We don't have the money. The head delegate nervously laughed. You don't have? Alcibiades shouted before he caught himself. He then angrily whispered in disbelief. You said you could pay for the expedition. I said you could pay. Were you lying to us this whole time? Yes, said the delegate. But how? Jumped Alcibiades, shouting a little now. We sent guys months ago. They saw all your piles of silver. You had tons of it at the temple and at the banquets. We tricked you, said the delegate contritely. To impress you, we borrowed as much silver as we could from our neighboring cities. We gathered it all up in the temple of Aphrodite and showed the collection to your delegation. What about the banquets? Asked Alcibiades. Where did you get the silver for those? This was a little clever, the official said with contrite pride. When your delegation retired before the banquet, we secretly moved all the silver objects from the temple to the banquet hall. There were a couple of times where we were almost caught and had to come up with wild stories on the fly. It was quite farcical, actually. That was the end of Dad's story. We did get to 30 talents from the suggestions, but that was far less than what we needed. We returned to Rhegium. People were upset. Our three generals are currently trying to figure out what to do next. Well, good night. 7. Fourth summer entry, first year. Dear Journal, the Melita is heading to Syracuse tomorrow. Maybe I'll get to see one of them. A Syracusan, I mean. After the bad news from Segesta, the generals were constantly meeting with each other. The usual guy who stood in the corner and did all the wine dispensing was sick, so I was randomly grabbed by a petty officer to fill in. A pitcher of wine was shoved in my hands, and I was told to stand quietly until someone held out an empty cup. I got to witness a high-level meeting with my own eyes. A big swoosh of the tent's door flap introduced Alcibiades to the room. I was seeing my idol up close for the first time. I could smell his perfume. It took a lot for me not to faint. Then Nicias shuffled in, muttering over the current problem, followed closely by Lamachus, pounding the ground with his feet. I'll write down the conversation they had. And how is running away the solution? We don't have the resources. Have you not seen the huge armada out there? Our mission is to end the hostilities between Segesta and Syracuse. If Segesta can't pay for the expedition, we shouldn't be using our resources to fight their war. And so your suggestion is to convince two enemies to be friends. Stop shaking, wine guy. You're getting wine all over my cuffs. Get away, go. Anyway, we should spend the rest of this summer and winter setting up alliances on Sicily, then attack the next fighting season. Ha ha! Politicians always want to wait. I'm dying to know what you have to suggest. I have fought more battles than either of you, and won! I know exactly what we should do. Attack! We have been getting reports that the Syracusans are in complete disarray. and they're divided on what actions to take. If we strike the city now, with our full force, the Syracusans will be shocked into surrender. However, if we wait, they have the time to prepare and harden their resolve. You have a point, but... Ew, Can we get another wine guy in here? That's as much as I can remember before I fainted. It was decided that Alcibiades would lead a contingent of ships down to Syracuse. There, he would get the lay of the land, then sail back. On the way, Alcibiades would look for allies and maybe a proper harbor to spend winter in. So, tomorrow, we'll get a look at Syracuse. I wonder if I might buy a place there with my war booty. After we take the city, everyone will be our slaves. 8. 5th summer entry, 1st year. Dear Journal, I'm sitting at an inn, writing in my war diary while chewing on some gritty bread. Thankfully, we found a city that let us in. A week ago or so, the Melita set off with a small fleet led by Alcibiades. As we made our way down the coast of the island, the reception wasn't much better than it was in Italy. We had high hopes for the city of Catana, as they were sympathetic towards Athens. However, when we got there, a pro-Syracusan faction had control of the city, so we sailed on. I couldn't see anything when we reached Syracuse, as I was rowing down below. Alcibiades lined up the ships close enough to the city so his voice could be heard by the citizens. He read out a proclamation. We were allowed to go up. This is when I first saw Syracuse. The stony city looked beautiful and imposing. Alcibiades is so cool, I said absent-mindedly. Really? Growled Dino. What's so cool about him? I remember seeing him once when we were both young, I reminisced. He threw himself in front of an oncoming wagon who refused to stop for him. He knows how to get what he wants. I bet he does get everything he wants, grumbled Dino. I also have a childhood memory. One day in the Angora, I saw Alcibiades abduct his estranged wife with a gang of thugs. No one helped her. She died soon afterwards too, you know. A blow of the horn interrupted our conversation. Alcibiades was finished talking and we were off again. Catana refused us entry again, but they said Alcibiades could bring his case to the populace the next day. So we beached our ships just upriver from the city. I was now on the island of Sicily for the first time. After we finished our maintenance on the Melita, a messenger arrived saying Alcibiades was looking for volunteers from every ship. Dino, Achilles, Humongulus, and I were sent. Alcibiades was already in the middle of a speech. The rest of Catana will come over to us if we show them that we are a friendly bunch and have nothing to fear, said Alcibiades, addressing the crowd. So I need you to make your way, unseen, to Catana and wait outside the wall where I told you. I will give you the signal, and don't forget, bring your money. We hid near a section of the wall that was clearly unfinished. After a good long wait, a young boy peeped over the top and waved at us. I waved back. Some guys with big hammers then pounded on the fragile part of the wall until a human-sized hole was opened up. I guess that boy there was Alcibiades' signal. We didn't see anyone until we reached the Agora, where the residents were gathered, listening to Alcibiades speak. We mingled amongst the crowd. I bought a scroll on famous rowers. Once the people of Catana realized we were already amongst them, they felt intimidated enough to vote in favor of opening up their city to us. We had a new base, thanks to the cleverness of Alcibiades. As long as he's around, what could go wrong? 9. 6th summer entry, 1st year. I almost forgot about the Herms. A ship came in the other day and took away Alcibiades. He was arrested. Took a while to piece together the whole story, but things have developed at home. I understand he has been charged with the destruction of the Herms, and for mocking the Eleusinian mysteries. That last part was new. I don't know the story at home. I'm counting on my foster mom filling me in with a letter, but who knows when that might arrive. 10. 7th summer entry, 1st year. Dear Journal, we have been spending our days rowing up and down Catana's harbor. The Melita was on guard duty. Meanwhile, our 2 remaining generals have been scouting the island looking for allies. I didn't mind guard duty. I like going into the city when I'm off work. I enjoy having my supper on Catana's wall. Not only is there a good view of the sunset, but sometimes, if you're lucky, a Syracusan cavalryman will come up to the wall and hurl insults at you. "Arr, you farty Athenian!" The Syracusans were getting jumpy. They assumed we would have attacked their city by now, while they were still unprepared. We may have dithered too long because even our enemy wants us to do something. The Syracusan cavalry was going to be a problem. We only brought 30 horses with us, not enough to protect our hoplites. So, when the time came to finally sail to Syracuse, a clever plan was devised by our generals. They sent a double agent. Our spy told the Syracusan generals that the Athenians slept inside Catana while keeping their ships and weapons outside at night. If the Syracusans could choose a day to attack, Catana's citizens, friendly to Syracuse, would close the gates on the sleeping Athenians, trapping them. Luckily, the Syracusan generals agreed and set a date for an attack. When the day arrived and the Syracusan cavalry attacked, we were already gone. We sailed to Syracuse during the night as the enemy cavalry were riding to Catana. We had misdirected our enemy, and that gave us enough time to set up a position just north of Syracuse. The whole time I was rowing in the dark. I felt like I was playing a kid's game. 11. 8th summer entry, 1st year. Dear Journal, this summer ended rather dramatically. There was a big battle with lightning and everything. Our little trick to get the Syracusans to attack Catana while we sailed to Syracuse worked like a dream. By the time their cavalry noticed we were gone, we had sailed into the great harbor that Syracuse overlooks. While we were there, we put up a wall to protect our beached ships. By the time we were settled in the harbor, the enemy cavalry had returned, tired. They still had some life in them though, because they lined up for battle. My brother Bob, however, was a soldier, so he was sent up to fight. "You're not just fighting for your city. It's up to you to bring glory to our family's name and to uphold its honor on the battlefield. So, no pressure." No problem. Now, I'm not a soldier, I'm a rower. So I didn't fight in the battle. Instead, the crew and I spent the day building up the walls of our enclosure. When I got back to the Melita, my brother had already returned, with a big bandage around his calf. "It's you," Dad said, spotting me. "You may want to hear this." I'll write down what Bob said. As I was saying, we formed up 8 deep. The Syracusans were not as well trained as we were. They were still fumbling to get in order. Nicias then gave a speech to us, which went on for too long. As our archers and slingers skirmished with the enemies, the priests did the sacrifices. The horn sounded and we locked shields. As we advanced, the flutes kept us in time. The Syracusans were caught unprepared. They scrambled to meet us. Our armies met and a pushing game commenced. Despite the Syracusans' initial bumbling, they didn't break. "They have some fight in them, do they?" Yes, and we were in a stalemate for hours. I found myself pushed closer to the wall of shields. Then the thunder and lightning began. I got slashed in the leg by a spear, which was thrusting out from the shield wall. I grabbed onto it and was able to take it out of my unseen enemy's hand. "Oh my God! Then what?" The enemy suddenly melted away. It almost became a rout. A rout, Jerry, is when you attack a fleeing enemy. That's where the real killing happens. But the Syracusan cavalry prevented us from pursuing them. Where's the spear? It'll make a great war trophy. I'm afraid I don't have it. I threw the spear into the fleeing mob. Soon after, a truce was called and the battle ended. We just finished up setting up a trophy, which, Jerry, we put up every time we win a battle. We make it from the shields and armor of our enemy. The enemy comes and requests a truce to take their dead from the field, confirming that they have indeed lost the battle. Ha! We'll write that story down right now and send it off to Athens. Bob's story was over. We didn't hang around long. After the dead were buried and the booty collected, we returned to Catana for the winter. There was no point in attacking Syracuse without the cavalry. As you saw, Syracuse's cavalry stopped us from routing them, so it was decided to wait for reinforcements to arrive. We're on lighter duties now, until summer. I hope I get a letter from home soon. Still very curious about what happened to Alcibiades.